welcome back to my channel. I am Joanna, me, my dog and books. And today is going to be a July reading wrap up. Don't know why I did that. July. Reading wrap. Oh, look, Lucy's there. Oh, can never point. She's lying down at the top sleeping. 14 books read, 2 DNFs, and I've got my stats on the screen here. So I'll go through my stats in the first instance, and then I'll do a quick run through of all the books, a very short synopsis or bit of what it's about, and then my thoughts. So first up, according to Storygraph, my moods for the books I've read were, check the pie chart, mostly dark, mysterious, emotional, intense. Maybe that describes me. Pace-wise, most of them were medium paced. Number of pages, quite biggies. Mostly between 300 and 499 pages is what I read. And this month, the mix between fiction and non-fiction was mostly fiction with a couple of non-fiction, for sure. And here's the genres. A wee bit different from last month. Got literary, horror, mystery, thriller, all up there. Formats is maybe the first month that was 50% audio and then a mix of print and digital. And then my average rating, 3.7. And I'll talk you through them right now. So in no particular order, actually I'll talk you about my 2 DNFs. Eyes, Guts, Throat and Bones. Throat, Bones. Eyes, Guts, Throat, Bones by Monika. This is a short story collection, kind of deemed more, let's say, queer female bodies at the end of the world unravels all our darkest impulses. Collection of short stories. It was so abstract for me that I didn't get it. That's possibly more about me than the book, but I'm passing it on to a friend. And hopefully they get more from it. Then there was Will Song by TJ Klune. I've read, I think two or three other TJ Klunes. The House of the Cerulean Sea, loved. Under the Whispering Door, I can't remember what the other one was. Was there another one? And then this, Under the Whispering Door, I DNF'd, and this I DNF'd at 25% because it was effectively icky werewolf porn. Anyway, those are the 2 that I DNF'd. Do you DNF books? Did you DNF any in July? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know. I would also love to know how many books you've read. 1 or half of 1 or 3/4 of 1. Still valid. You're a reader. This is more in a random order, but literally just finished this one today. It's The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones, who is a horror author who I pretty much all buy his books. This is the third in a trilogy, the third and last in the trilogy. The first one is My Heart is a Chainsaw, second is Don't Fear the Reaper, and then this is the third, so I'll not give you the synopsis, other than if you're into slashers, it's very much more character rather than a full-on slasher. It's about Jade Daniels, who's one of my favourite main characters. She's half Native American, I think. Her mum's Native American, abusive father. Anyway, not a very good family background from the fact that she's been left with an abusive father. Proof Rock is the place she stays. And she then goes to... She's about to fall out of college, she has one last assignment and her first, so she decides to write kind of 101 horror slasher books. Anyway, and she starts looking at the history of Proof Rock and discovers there's missing people, there's loads of stuff. Anyway, that's the premise, really well. Honestly, Stephen Graham Jones' character development and world building, and not that it's a fantasy in the slightest, but more that the place and the people he builds in this trilogy is amazing. Recommend if it sounds up your street. Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. Wow, definitely a story about womanhood and in particular motherhood. I and how that somehow equates to kind of transitioning into some sort of feral dog at night. That's all I'm going to say. However, it is so cleverly written. It has such amazing commentary on the expectations of women, and especially women who become mothers and give up either their job, their individual status, their hobbies, doing anything around all of that. It is so cleverly written that way. And the fact that one of you lovely people told me that this is getting turned into a movie that comes out in December with Amy Adams, I can't wait to see what the heck that looks like. This is unhinged, utterly wild, very thought-provoking. Then I picked up this has been on my shelf for ages, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Alice Feeney is a solid thriller writer for me. One of my favourites of hers is Daisy Darker. Highly recommend it around autumn, Halloween time, because that's when it's set. This one's set in the Scottish Highlands in the winter time, and you've got kind of a couple who are going up to almost reinvigorate their marriage. You've got their 2 points of view, and then you start to kind of wonder, like, how did we get, like, you said you won this weekend away, but by whom? And then strange things start to happen around the isolated place that they're staying, and you start to discover they've both got secrets and you don't know who's telling the truth. Overall, solid thriller. Didn't guess the endings. All the characters were unlikable. Didn't like any of them. So if you're looking for a light page turner, like, and the fact that I didn't guess the twists were pretty decent. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. It may have taken me 2 months to read it, but this is a stonker. Stephen King's latest book, You Like It Darker, which is a series of 12 stories, all pretty dark, and I can't, like, I've tabbed them all. I would say 80% of them were amazing for me, and the other 20% were good. 5-star read. I will read everything Stephen King writes. Some of these were jaw-dropping for me, and then what I would highly recommend is there's a podcast I listen to called the Talking Scared podcast that talks a lot about horror books, and this month he interviewed Stephen King for the second time, specifically talking about this book. It doesn't have spoilers, but I would say, like, I find it more beneficial hearing about it or listening to the podcast after I've read it, because he talks about some of the stories. He also talks about other books. It's an hour-long podcast. If you're a Stephen King fan, highly recommend. I'll put the link in the description. But wow, yeah, loved it. Loved it. The Dictionary People, I picked this up when I was down on a bookish trip in Bristol last month. If you haven't seen that, wherever here, I'll try and remember to put the link in the description. If not, nudge me in the comments, because I try and remember these things. Sometimes I forget. But this is about the plethora of people that helped develop the English Oxford Dictionary way back and when it was first published in 1928, I think. And it says from archaeologists and astronomers to murderers, naturists, novelists, pornographers, queer couples, suffragettes, vicars and vegetarians. They are the combination of all the people that create the Dictionary People. It's actually cleverly written in that the chapters, so I read it in audio, but I would probably recommend reading it in print if you are able to. It's not bad in audio. I think I just kind of zoned a bit out a little bit, and it's the kind of book, so you can see the chapters, 26 chapters A to Z, and it says A for archaeologist, B for best contributor, C for cannibal. And this is written by Sarah Ogilvey, who, if I keep this right, she teaches at Oxford University. She specialises in language, but she was a lexicographer As a lexicographer, she has been an editor at the Oxford English Dictionary and chief editor of Oxford Dictionaries in Australia as well. So her analysis and research of this book is phenomenal. It is such an interesting story about language, the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary, quite a lot of commentary about other forms of English, especially American English as well in the mix there, and just the absolutely fascinating people that would write slips. They called it slips, so they would like send slips of like information about words and words to be included throughout all of them. It was absolutely fascinating. I found the narration on the audiobook a little bit hard to kind of stay engaged with sometimes, so I would say if you can, if you're able to, if you're not, do audio, otherwise read in print, and it's probably a book I would say you could easily dip in and out of. Fascinating story. I'd probably reread it at some point. Then there's a book I got as an advanced reader, ARC, The Dead Friend Project. Came out this month, so it's out just now. It's sold as a murder mystery, right? So, well, it's sold as a mystery, but you follow Beth, whose friend Charlotte was killed in a hit and run car incident a year ago. She's convinced when she discovers that her friend Charlotte had left her son, young like toddler, in the house while she went for a run. She was like, Charlotte would never do that. So she was like, this sounds a bit sus. So she's convinced there was something untoward. So that is her dead friend project. However, it seems that like that is a plot line, but there seems to be so many other plot lines about just the cliquiness of playgroup mums, and Beth is a single mum because her husband left her for one of her friends, and so she's dealing with all of that. She also has an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, which plays a big factor in some of her behaviour, which a little bit I think could have been addressed a bit more, maybe, but I don't know. Something on this, I was just like, maybe I'm not the target audience, maybe I'm not the one that is like, 'cause I'm not a mum and I'm not at the playground and I'm not at school pickup seeing all the kind of dynamics that happen around there. So maybe if you are, you would get on with this a little bit better. It's supposed to be satirical and humorous. Didn't find it funny at all. The reason I read it is because I got it as an ARC and I thought maybe I'll get to the end and it's, well, that ending was highly unsatisfiable. Personally don't recommend, but there are many 4 and 5 star reviews for that book, so people like it, and that's fine, and that's good. I don't, and that's also fine and good. The next, this was easily 4, possibly 5, but definitely 4.5 star book. It was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. Imagine a feminist revenge story as you see the birth of a cannibalistic serial killer. Now that sounds way gorier, and I mean it does involve eating eyes, okay, I'm not gonna lie, but it's much more character based, and I say slower burn but in a really good build up way. It's not, there's a bit of body horror obviously with the eye eating, but it's not full on gore, it's not full on, I would call it more literary horror. I hate using the word literary because it implies everything else doesn't, but you know what I mean, that kind of it's not bam in your face like full on horror. It has an amazing social commentary about misogyny, the fetishization, hypersexualization of Asian women. This is about a Korean American family, and about abuse and racism, and there's so much packed into this. And watching Jaiwan, who is the main character, develop into someone that absolutely obsesses about eating the eyeballs of bad men is phenomenal. Like this is so unhinged, unique and clever. I adored it. However, it's not for everyone. I appreciate. If you're still here and still watching, thank you, because there's quite a few to go through. Another was one of my excited releases of the year. It's Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. Riley Sager is an auto-buy author for me. I would say sometimes these books are hit and miss generally when it comes to reviews. This one's getting a bit the same, because I would think it's much more of a like Survive the Night and House Across the Lake are much more kind of fast-paced thrillers. This one's a bit of a more of a slow burn mystery, I would say. Mystery thriller, so it's maybe not as hard, fast and punchy. But I really enjoyed it. So you follow, is it Ethan? Ethan. 30 years ago, was camping in his back garden with his best friend Billy. Wakes up in the middle of the night, Billy's been taken. That was never solved. So you're 30 years on, and he comes back after stuff has happened in his life, and he's moved back to his mum and dad's house, so the childhood home. They've moved to Florida or somewhere, I think, and things start to happen where he's getting almost what he deems as messages either from Billy or something to try and like nudge him to try and solve this crime. I never saw the twist coming. It slowly builds. It does take, like, it was about 40% before you start to get, ooh. I didn't mind that. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a lovely, another great story by Riley Sager. Adored it. I would say solid. Did I have 4 or 5? 4? Maybe a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I will continue to buy all of his books and read them all. Then there was The Silence Factory by Bridget Collins. I think I read, what was the other one of her books I read? The Binding. Did I? I can't remember now. But also look at this cover, it's a wee bit shiny because it's a library book. So I read this and I thought it was a wee bit too long. However, caveat by saying I enjoyed the premise. So you have 2 timelines. Is it a great aunt or something? Anyway, you have 2 timelines. You have these 2 characters are going to across the seas to a country that is not theirs to take these samples of like animals, the spiders that create this like magic, like almost like magical silk that creates silence when you create them into fabric. That is discovered later in the story, kind of nowadays time. So you follow that story there, which actually seems to come to a bit of a dead end at some points. But anyway, I like the premise because then you start to see where in the modern day, which is still historical fiction, that there's this factory that's working with all this silk and creating fabric that can create silence. So you can imagine like silence around from the world. So you can only imagine how powerful that could be. However, for those young people and people working in the factory, there's consequences, and it's all of that that's coming to fruition. I thought it was a bit long, but overall, fascinating concept, and I would give it a solid 3 out of 5 stars. I'm gonna have to pile them over here because we're getting a bit. Next up is a book that I received from Fourth Estate, an indie publisher in the UK. The Lasting Harm, Witnessing the Trial of Gillian Maxwell. I consumed this in 48 hours and I would say adored it, right? It was hard to adore a story like this, but it was phenomenal. 5-star read. It is so cleverly and diligently researched. So it's by Lucia Osborne-Crowley, who is one of the only 4 reporters allowed in to the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. It is not so much about Ghislaine, obviously it's about the horrific acts that her and Jeffrey Epstein have pulled off. Oh. There's kids cycling by. It's okay, it's okay. Stand down, stand down, stand down. Lucy's in the room just in case you didn't know. it's more about the victims and their story of in particular the 4 that come forward as part of this trial, and you start to understand why, how they were treated, especially by the defence, and all of it unravels. It gave me an insight I had no idea. I mean, we know a lot about these crimes and it's abhorrent, but this was jaw-dropping. Obviously, given the content, all the trigger warnings, is a very hard read, but I thought it was phenomenal, and I want to read more from this author. Next up was my book group read of July, which was River East, River West by Obi Ray Lescour, who won the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. So it's very much about the East and West in the respect of Chinese and American culture. You see it from a slightly inverted way than we normally do, which is there's an American woman who is in China and she has a daughter. So she's a single mum, and you see the story of where she develops a relationship, and a marriage starts with a marriage to a Chinese man, Lu Fang. They originally meet in 1985, and then it's like modern day 2007, where you see, it starts with American mothers. What's the mother's name? They're not giving her mother's name. The 3 of their relationship, Alva, her mum, and Lu Fang, over the course of between 1985, before Alva existed, and then 2007, where Alva and his mum is marrying Lu Fang. Alva is quite an annoying teenage daughter, but you can start to understand why, because of her mum, who is almost fetishized in China because she's American. And there's a complex relationship that goes on between Lu Fang and her, as well as between Alva, and you start to see a lot about Chinese culture in respect of misogyny, patriarchy, class, status. Very intriguing read. I really didn't like most of the characters. At times I was like, I really disengaged quite a lot in the middle, so I struggled with it a little bit, but I found the insight into Chinese culture and the view of the West and vice versa really interesting. Because I was reading Scottish books and have done for the past few months, this is my Scottish book of the month, which was not that I plan on reading one monthly, but it might happen by accident, is Ginger and Me by Elisa Suave. This is a lovely story about kind of coming age, because she's 19, but she's lost, her mum has died, she's on her own, she's trying to make it in that, just functioning as an adult. She works as a bus driver in Uddingston, which is in the central belt of Scotland, which I know. Then she meets this friend called Ginger, who's from a very complicated family background, and Ginger starts to spend a lot of time with her, and it's when Ginger enters her life that things start to happen and chaos ensues. That's all I'm going to say in respect of it. I really enjoyed it. I actually would highly recommend this in audio if you are able to listen to audiobooks, because the accents are done so well. It's colloquial, a bit of Scots, but not as much as, say, books like Duck Feet or Glasgow Boys. And it's interesting to see how Wendy and Ginger build a friendship based on their own need for belonging and friendship and love. Lovely, lovely. And last but not least was one of my first books of the month in July, which was Youre Here by David Nicholls. So I read David Nicholls' book One Day that was turned into a Netflix show. I've not seen the Netflix show, but I read One Day when it first came out years and years and years ago. I remember really enjoying it. I haven't watched the Netflix show, despite the fact I don't know one person doesn't think it's amazing, because I'm not really into romance stuff. And I thought, well, everybody was raving about this book, and I got it for in the charity shop. So I was like, I'm picking it up. And do you know what? If you like, and it's not, if you like romance, especially of, I say middle age, but it makes me feel old, but 40 plus, the two characters, Marnie and Michael, have both had, you know, like previous relationships. They kind of meet together. Michael loves going hiking, but he's quite solitary. Marnie joins a group of individuals, and you just watch them come together during that journey, which I enjoyed. You see hence the walking maps there. Lovely characters, well written. I think the only reason I was like, it's maybe not for me, is because I'm not a big romance reader. It's not like explicit in any way. It's pretty joyful, I would say. So that's what I would recommend it. So, okay, so after I recorded the July reading wrap up, I realised I'd only told you about 13 books and not the 14th. So the 14th book was the Rachel incident, which I read on audio, influenced by Simon from Savage Reads. I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend the audio because it's written by an Irish author and the narration is Irish. You follow Rachel and there's an incident, but actually her and her BFF, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, her gay friend, they flat share together. It's actually a beautifully written cis heteronormative woman with a friendship with a gay man that isn't in any way cliched or like hammed up in any way. That's not to say, I'm sure those relationships do exist, but it felt like a really more natural, new, what shouldn't feel refreshing way, but of how that relationship was written and told. I loved their friendship. There is a slight third wheel in that relationship. Professor, is it Professor? Yes. Anyway, that all comes a bit murky. But Rachel and her best friend character, why can't I remember the name? I'll check it out. I'll have put it here somewhere. It's actually quite funny at times. It's really well written, and I think I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. The cover, the American cover, I think this is American cover, I far enjoyed more than the UK cover. I don't know, this appeals to me more. And I think actually the UK cover kind of put me off reading it in the first instance, because I thought it would be much more like graphically hedonistic and stuff, and there is about them going out and being young, sort of in their early 20s and stuff like that. Nothing that irked me in any way. So I'm kind of glad that Simon mentioned it, because otherwise I might not have picked it up by making assumptions purely based on the cover. But yes, I recommend. I would say I've had a pretty successful reading month overall. 2 DNFs ain't too shabby. Only a few that I didn't actually love. Those are the DNFs there, but just not for me. DNFs, or any ones that I rate lower, are my opinion. Other people love them. Actually, maybe that is a booktube video I need to do. Reading the 1-star reviews of books I've loved so far in 2024, because that would make me laugh. Yeah, so if you've read any of these books, let me know. If you fancy any of these books after me telling you about them, let me know. Let me know your favourite books or least favourite books of July have been. I'd love to hear them, and I love chatting with you all in the comments, and I do love it when you leave me a comment. And I know sometimes I'm not always the fastest at replying, but I do reply. So yeah. Thanks very much for watching, and if you like this video, please do like, and if you haven't already, please click and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye!